evening and welcome to Self-Care Tips. I am Irene Joroge, and we're going to look at the issue of making the transition from the city to country life. With devolution, a lot of new opportunities have opened up in smaller towns, and this means a lot of people are moving. There are many opportunities. One of the first things you're going to notice about small towns as soon as you begin to settle there is that people talk about others all the time. This is because everybody knows everybody else, and they do talk about the new faces, and this can be quite serious if you're not ready for it. They note how you live very quickly and they make conclusions about it. For example, if you live well, you can be branded a show off. If you live a simple life, they'll say that you came to the country because you were desperate in Nairobi. If you go out a lot, it means you're a rioter. If you are the silent type, you could even be told that you're proud and that you don't talk to people. And if you are the talkative type, you'll be told that you talk too much, that you're a kiherehere. Some of these are the realities of moving up country. These are some of the things you have to get ready to get into when you move to the new upcountry emerging towns. In Nairobi, life is very different because everybody minds their own business. Another thing that nobody ever prepares you for about life upcountry is the encounter with brokers, or rather, middlemen. Anything you want to do has to be vetted by middlemen. If you want to buy land, you have to go through a middleman. If you want to grab a taxi or something, there's a middleman. These brokers can make life unbearable because they crowd around you, they gather around, and they really, really are quite controlling. But when all is said and done, it is worth living up country because there are new things there, there's good food, there's fresh air, and there's a lot of free time that you can use to do other things. So take that chance, and why not move to the country? I am Irene Joroge on Self-Care Tips, joining you from Kirinyaga County.
Vitimbi Jumatatu hii. Jumuika nasi siku ya Jumatatu ili upate uhondo kamili kwenye vitimbi. Hiyo basi usikose burudani tosha kila siku ya Jumanne hadi Alhamisi saa 1:35 katika tamthilia ya Maza. Get ready for the next big thing.
A woman with a voice is by definition a strong woman.
So we need to start bringing out the profession in a woman.
When we demonstrate, they will come when we've been tear gassed, not when we want to pass the message.
The Dada's Show is back, a show where women get to be themselves and discuss real issues.
She cannot allow other women to come on the same space because she's getting different privileges from men. So akiona mwanamke, ako like, this is a competitor.
This being an election year, we have given an opportunity to women to express themselves and share their expectations during this critical moment in our country.
The issue of corruption and how it has impacted women and children in this country.
Create jobs for the informal sector, create jobs for the youth who leave the universities.
Hatutaki bora uongozi, tunataka uongozi bora.
Keep your heels, head and standards high. Dadas, coming soon.
Good evening. You are in time for KBC Prime Edition, this 5th day of April 2022. The time, 9 p.m. East African. Coming to you live from Broadcasting House right here in Nairobi, Kenya.
Thank you so much for joining us. A very warm welcome to this live broadcast. Kenya's COVID-19 positivity rate reduces to 0.3%. This even as Shanghai now puts the entire city on lockdown following a surge of the infection.
And right here at home, we're expecting the budget to be read in 2 days. A budget of 3.3 trillion, and Treasury proposes that the Kenya revenue collects 2.1 trillion shillings. All that coming up in this live broadcast, beginning right now with our top stories. It was premeditated. Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i speaks on Raila attacking Soy.
We want our mandate back. IEBC to appeal ruling by the High Court barring them from summoning election offenders.
And the fuel shortage crisis continues as motorists endure another day of major supply disruptions. Thank you very much for joining us.
At KBC Channel 1 News, that Purity_Museo at Mboya24, the hashtag is Prime Edition. Once again, welcome to the broadcast and do engage us. We are live on all our social media platforms. Susan Thuku is a sign language interpreter tonight. And the live broadcast begins right now. The government has deployed 25% of police resources to combat banditry in the North Rift and Laikipia regions. Interior Cabinet Secretary Dr. Fred Matiang'i Monday told legislators that the National Security Council resolved to close the region's airspace for 30 days. He said the government has also deployed the Kenya Defence Forces to set up water pans for pastoralists in the region. And as Geshuki Washira reports, area leaders appear unconvinced that security situation is improving.
Interior Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i, appearing before the National Assembly Administration and Security Committee, attributed insecurity in North Rift and Laikipia to proliferation of illegal firearms, political incitements, high levels of illiteracy, and historical land disputes between communities. Matiang'i informed MPs the government had deployed 25% of police resources in the region to keep law and order.
Close to about 25% of our policing resources in the country are spent virtually on that belt of our country. We have kept increasing numbers of our police officers, and now we have come to a point where we are embedding specially trained teams.
Banditry has complicated the lives of thousands of Kenyans residing in parts of Laikipia, Baringo and Elgeyo Marakwet counties. The National Security Council resolved that Kenya Defence Forces be deployed to assist in setting up water pans to mitigate the conflicts.
We have the proposed Ayen Dam, the Chesitate water pan, and the proposed Chesitate 2 water pan that is being done and supported by the KDF. Because this way then we are able to provide livelihoods and support to the livestock herders who live in these particular areas.
The government has also closed the Laikipia Nature Conservancy airspace to allow surveillance.
We hope that as we go forward, what will help this place is not more soldiers or more police officers and more equipment. It is administering the place more responsibly. We have created and operationalized over 50 new administrative units in this belt, as it were, to provide administration and security resources closer to the population.
While the government maintains security situation in the region is improving, MPs from the north maintain the government is not doing enough.
On the road going from Marsabit town towards Turbi, there was a massacre of a small vehicle. All the occupants of that vehicle, 7 of them were dead. And the killing is even the road is insecure.
Acknowledging the conflicts in North Rift and Laikipia regions are caused by a host of factors, the Ministry of Interior is confident that the efforts they have put in place will grant them a win in the war against banditry. Reporting from Parliament, I'm Gishoke Washira.
On to our continued coverage of the election preparedness. The Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission says that it will appeal the ruling by the High Court that stripped its Electoral Code Enforcement Committee of powers to summon any witness or candidate found to be in violation of the Electoral Code of Conduct.
IEBC Commissioner Irene Cherop Masit says the commission did not act in vain when it summoned Murang'a County Woman Representative Sabina Chege over her claims of rigging in the 2017 general election.
An exclusive interview with KBC English Service, IEBC Commissioner Irene Masit said the Commission welcomes the High Court decision exonerating Murang'a MP Sabina Chege and was still studying the judgment.
We've just petitioned the court on appeal. We are a law-abiding commission and we abide by what the courts say. So we are going and we'll keep you posted. I know it will be in public domain. This committee is anchored in law. Actually, it's in the Elections Act. It's law. We are studying actually the judgment and we'll be giving our opinion on the same soon.
Justice Anthony Mrima on Monday ruled that IEBC committee does not have powers to issue summons. He held that the Commission's Code of Conduct does not apply as political candidates seeking elective seats have not yet been determined, hence are not binded by the code. Chege had made remarks at a political rally claiming that the 2017 elections might have been rigged. This comes as Gatundu South MP Moses Kuria awaits the disciplinary committee hearing on 7th of April in a probe following his vote rigging claims. On 30th March, IEBC Chairman Wafula Chebukati said the matter was legally before the committee, dismissing preliminary objections raised by Kuria's defense team on jurisdiction of the committee to hear his case. For Prime Edition, I'm Ben Troinjue.
On to counties and finance. The Council of Governors, COG, has threatened to move to court to compel the National Treasury to release 48 billion shillings meant for county governments in outstanding balance of the share revenue in the financial year 2021-2022.
And the Council of Governors Vice Chairperson James Ongwae said unless the National Treasury provides an overdraft to help cushion counties from the delay in the disbursement of the funds, services across all counties could be paralyzed. Here is more with Ben Chumba.
The Division of Revenue in 2021 allocated county governments equitable share revenue amounting to 370 billion shillings. With only 2 months to the end of financial year 2021-2022, the Council of Governors claims it is yet to receive 148 billion shillings of that amount from the National Treasury.
8.26 billion owed to 11 counties for January, 16.20 billion owed to 23 county governments for February allocation, 29.6 billion owed to 47 county governments for March allocation, and 33.3 billion owed to 47 county governments for the April allocation.
During the Council's meeting to discuss pertinent issues affecting county governments, the Council of Governors threatened to sue national government should the stalemate remain unresolved.
We will also engage CBK, CRA, COB, and the National Treasury to provide for an overdraft facility that will help cushion counties from the delay in disbursement of funds.
We have recommended that the National Treasury consult urgently with the Attorney General on the way forward on the matter of the 107 billion ineligible pending bills, so that a way forward can be found.
While dismissing claims that most counties are not utilizing the released funds, the Council of Governors said due to delayed disbursement of the funds, several county governments are even unable to mitigate the effects of drought.
Over 3.1 million people are food insecure in 24 counties, with over 360,000 people in the emergency phase and over 800,000 children facing malnutrition.
national government should take this issue very seriously, as I think what I saw, the county governments have no capacity to intervene in terms of, because of the money that, the MECA money that they receive.
We also continue to appeal to international community, particularly the ones involved in humanitarian undertakings, to come in, because we have a looming disaster, and now that the rains for April, the onset has delayed, things are bound to worsen.
As the August 9 polls draw closer, the Council of Governors says it has commenced preparations to ensure proper management of transition in the counties and the assumption of office of the governors. Ben Chumba, Prime Edition.
Well, Purity had indicated that Shanghai is on lockdown. Here in Kenya, the COVID-19 positivity rate Tuesday night stood at 0.3% following the confirmation of 11 new COVID-19 infections out of 3,922 samples tested over the last 24 hours.
And the total confirmed positive cases now stand at 323,479 out of the over 3.5 million samples screened in the country so far.
Well, that's according to the Ministry of Health. No death was recorded today, with a total of fatalities remaining at 5,648.
And over 17 million people have received the jab in the country, as well as, according to data from the Johns Hopkins University, over 494 million COVID-19 infections have been confirmed globally, with 6.2 million deaths being reported.
Well, and that's the way it was, the COVID situation. Moving on, a group of specialists from the United States of America is in the country for 1 week, and this is what they're going to do. They will be running an autism awareness program right here in the capital city, Nairobi.
And on the first day of the initiative, stakeholders called on the government through the Minister of Education to incorporate autism as a unit in the competence-based curriculum.
Beatrice Gatonye reports.
During the launch of a 1 week Children with Autism Awareness Program, National Assembly Health Committee Chair Sabina Chege said there is need for more collaboration by all stakeholders to ensure children with autism are fully integrated in the society.
I think coming together, and that's why I said through the societies, even through the Ministry of Education, because we have KICD that does the curriculum, we can be able to have more special schools. I know the ministry was working towards integrating, not separating them, but integrating them with the system. But we also appreciate that not all of them can be integrated within the normal system. And so a parallel program like what the city primary they are doing is very important to be.
Chege also noting that the number of teachers with special training on handling children with autism should be increased.
We also making sure that in our institutions, we're also training enough special teachers, and not just training them about, I am a teacher by profession, not just about teaching in a class, but also how do we train them on how also to take care of, even to offer support. Some of these parents are, in depression, they are overwhelmed. So when such a parent comes to you, apart from them bringing a child, are you also able to offer support to the parent? I think it's all of us. It's a responsibility that we need to take, all of us.
A group of specialists from the US are leading the campaign.
So from the parents training, I like what they're doing here. They're also training them on the therapy and what needs to be done. It needs to be part of education, the basic education. So the ministry cannot run away from it.
We train them on how they can actually teach these kids skills in the home, because not everyone can afford evidence-based services. But when we give them the skills, when we give them the strategies, then they are able to actually do that.
The 1 week program will see parents, teachers and caregivers of children with autism receive training on how to handle the children as they equip them with life skills. Beatrice Gatonye, Prime Edition.
On to a story that we headlined in our headline stories. 3 members of parliament allied to the Azimio La Umoja coalition now want the Directorate of Criminal Investigations to summon Deputy President William Ruto over the attack on presidential flag bearer Raila Odinga's entourage in Uasin Gishu County last week.
Suna East Member of Parliament Junet Mohammed, his Embakasi East counterpart Babu Wino and John Mbadi of Suna South recorded statements at the DCI headquarters on Wednesday.
Here's that report.
Interior CS Dr. Fred Matiang'i had been summoned by the National Assembly Committee on National Security and Administration of Justice to respond to concerns over deterioration of security in the country. On the recent stoning of Azimio presidential candidate Raila Odinga's motorcade and helicopter in Uasin Gishu, Matiang'i said investigations point out at a planned attack.
It is emerging from the evidence that we have collected, the evidence that was collected on that night, that was actually a premeditated act. It was planned because the suspects who were arrested with hoards of thousands of shillings broken down in 50 shilling notes, and they have taken statements. Clearly there must have been some choreography.
Matiang'i said they are conducting forensic investigations to unearth more evidence warning that swift action will be taken on whoever organized the violence. While enumerating the recent attacks on politicians, Matiang'i, however, said the incidents were isolated.
Since this year started and the movement around the country, we have had about 4 incidents of this kind. There was an incident in Busia involving the deputy president. We have people we have arrested who are in court on the matter. There was an incident in Kondere in Kisumu, which we dispersed, a rowdy mob of people in a meeting that the deputy president addressed. And then there was the incident in Nairobi, again, which involved a conflict between groups of youth who have been given money or paid or ferried to the meeting and so on. And then there is this incident in Uasin Gishu.
He spoke as Suna East MP Junet Mohammed, Babu Awino of Embakasi East, and John Mbadi of Suba South presented themselves to the DCI headquarters to give their version of events that led to the attack of Raila.
I was personally present that day in that scene, and what I saw is an episode that I will not wish to see again in my life, because I saw death with my own eyes. This is something that is unacceptable, something that should not happen in our country.
If you see the way they were behaving and conducting themselves and communicating, and the kind of defiance that came from this youth, it is clear that someone had organized this youth.
Hiyo siku kifo ilituvisit na Mwenyezi Mungu alitusaidia.
The trio wants investigations carried out and the culprits brought to book.
The government is going to take action. We have been promised that nothing is going to be left, no stone will be left unturned. And I hope this time, seriously, no stone will be left unturned.
We want to call upon the security operators to be able to go and arrest those people immediately, so that we can be able to put this thing to rest.
This as Women Mediation Network Kenya called for political sobriety as election fever heightens.
Misuse of the youth by these politicians, whether they're presidential aspirants or whether whoever it is, must stop. The women of Kenya are saying, stop putting our children at those levels of violence.
The women leaders say peace is paramount, even as they start collecting 1 million signatures around the country to call for peaceful campaigns.
We are calling out and we are saying, shame on you, you men who are coming in big cars, causing havoc in our household. I say no as a governor aspirant, and I want all the men we are competing with to stop giving the young men handouts.
Ruth Wamboy for Prime Edition.
Well, very well. The Amani National Congress leader also made some comments. He said Kenya Kwanza Coalition member parties will ensure that there is democracy prevails within their party primaries. That story is going to come up
absolutely
shortly.
After this break. We'll also be telling you how UDA primaries will be held mid-month.
Do you have a news story to share with KBC? Get in touch swiftly on email news@kbc.co.ke or call 0723-892-654 or 0734-780-124.
Ili kupata mafuta kupanda kwenye star 397 hash.
Nashukuru serikali kwa kuongeza bei ya mafuta. Sasa niko kwa highway na hakuna traffic hata kidogo. Naomba serikali iendelee hivyo, tubaki tu watu ya gasla na heavy machine peke yake. Pia mimi naomba huyu serikali waseme kama gari yako ni below 3000 cc, gari yako
ili kupata kupanda kama skiza tune, bonyeza star 811 star 397 hash. The star 811 star 397 hash.
As times changes, technologies grow, and so you need to be in the know.
We are looking into matters, technology and education.
We bring you tech news from all over the world.
Me, I understand science revolves around life.
Tech policies and programs, Take on Tech has your back. Coming to your screens every Saturday at 4:30 p.m. only on KBC Channel 1. Join me, Stephanie Ayeta and Grace Githaga as we serve you with only the best tech updates the world over.
There you are. Welcome back. Now, Amani National Congress Party leader Musalia Mudavadi says that member parties under the Kenya Kwanza coalition will ensure that democracy prevails in their party primaries.
He said the coalition will put in place measures to ensure that they have strong candidates with a view of consolidating their strength in parliament.
Well, meanwhile, the United Democratic Alliance primaries will be held on the 14th of this month. Here's that report.
Amani National Congress Party leader Musalia Mudavadi was speaking in Nairobi during a meeting with over 600 delegates from Westlands and Dagoretti North constituencies. He said he ditched Azimio for lack of sincerity.
Tulieleza kinaganaga kwa nini tumehama kule. Kutokuwa na uaminifu kwa Azimio. Udanganyifu mwingi. Wanataka mambo ya self-preservation. Walidanganya ni handshake ya kuleta watu pamoja. Lakini haikuwa handshake ya kuleta watu pamoja. Ilikuwa handshake ya kupanga urithi wa kisiasa.
Mudavadi also spoke against political hooliganism and called for impartiality in dealing with the vice.
Wale walirusha, kama mtu alirusha mawe kwa ndege huko Eldoret, ni makosa. Lakini hata yule alirusha Kisumu ni makosa. Hata yule alirusha Busia ni makosa. Hata yule alirusha Jakaranda makosa. Hata yule alirusha Kibera makosa. Hata yule alirusha hapa Keno watu wawili wakakufa makosa. Moranga. Kwa hivyo ukizungumza kwa yote. Kwa nini unataka useme tu ni upande mmoja?
Meanwhile, the United Democratic Alliance National Elections Board has stated that nominations for all the wards, constituencies and counties will be held on the 14th of April 2022. UDA National Elections Board Chairman Anthony Mwaura also ruled out issuance of direct tickets to aspirants and warned aspirants found violating the party's code of conduct that they risk being disqualified.
10th April, aspirants are notified of appointed presiding officers and polling center cracks. On that 10th April, all the people who will be identified to be our presiding officers and the polling centers cracks will be shown to our aspirants. 12th April, training of presiding officers and polling cracks. 13th April, briefing and correction of nomination materials, and proceeding to polling centers by presiding officers, polling clerks, and security officers. 14th April, accreditation of agents and our nominations.
President Uhuru Kenyatta has challenged parliamentarians in the Great Lakes region to champion for peace and a conflict-free area.
In his address to the Forum for Parliamentarians from the International Conference of the Great Lakes region, read on his behalf by Interior CS Dr. Fred Matiang'i, the President implored on the representatives to be more proactive and involve the public more in conflict prevention and resolution framework.
Now, the parliamentarians drawn from 12 member states are in Kenya for the convention that will last for 3 days. Senate Speaker Ken Lusaka is the president of the forum.
As you deliberate on these very pertinent issues, remember that the eyes and hopes and aspirations of hundreds of millions rest firmly on you. I trust that you shall lead the region into a bright new dawn that is free of conflict, that is bold and responsive to the desire of our people for peace and prosperity, and which breathes life into the unity and common purpose that must be the foundation for our individual and collective peace and security. Our legislatures have a unique role to play by continually addressing the issues of equitable distribution of resources and economic development. Parliamentarians are critical in creating and sustaining the enabling environment that guards against the emergence and escalation of conflict.
Kenya is going to have its elections this year in August. We are looking forward to a peaceful election and want to appeal to all the political players to ensure that we have peace during elections.
Now, a family in Dandora, Nairobi County is still searching for their son who went missing on December the 30th, 2021 last year. 6-year-old Sean Hendrin Hamilton was last seen in Dandora Phase 4 wearing a light blue t-shirt, a black trouser and black shoes.
Carol Sean's grandmother says, though epileptic, he is a loving and jovial child and one with information on his whereabouts should contact the nearest police station.
Tarehe 30, Thursday, 2021, kwa kitu kama saa 8 Desemba. Sasa hiyo wakati nilikuwa nimemwacha kwa nyumba. Mimi nafanya Dandora Kinyago Police Station. Sasa mtoto ananipendanga sana, akikosa kuniona hawezi kula, hawezi fanya kitu. Sasa ni kama alitoka kwa nyumba. Kutoka kwa nyumba alikuwa anajaribu kuja pale nafanya kazi. Kuja pale nafanya kazi. Sasa saa 8 ndiye alionekana mara ya mwisho. Desemba tarehe 30.
Now, the court has dismissed a petition filed by the Busia Governor Sospita Ojamong seeking stay of proceedings of his graft case over claims that he has another pending application at the Court of Appeal.
Ojamong was charged with the loss of 8 million shillings belonging to Busia County in 2020.
Anti-corruption magistrate Douglas Ogoti in his ruling said there is no urgency to the application made by the Busia Governor Sospita Ojamong contrary to the certificate of urgency, considering the application had been already filed before the same court and dismissed 2 years ago.
That they are seeking orders already denied at 3 levels of the hearings previously.
He also added that the application should not be allowed to interfere with proceedings because during pretrial directions the rules were clear.
On applications, the pretrial order was very clear that all applications shall be filed and heard and determined on any other date other than the trial date.
Submissions by both parties will be made on the May 5th, while the hearing will be on June 8th, 2022. Meanwhile, A petition has been filed at the High Court seeking to stop interviews for 3 positions by the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution, slated for April 28 this year. The petitioner, member Ocharo, through his lawyer, accuses the Director of Public Prosecution, Nudin Haji, of nepotism, claiming the candidates shortlisted for the position of Principal Administrative Officer, Senior Supply Chain Management Officer, and Senior Principal Finance Officer come from the same ethnic and religious backgrounds as that of the DPP. He said that the actions of the DPP are a violation of Article 72 and 232 of the Constitution and Section 3 and 7 of the Leadership and Integrity Act. The Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions on its website on March 29th this year released a list of candidates shortlisted for 20 positions in various departments. The Public Service Commission has been listed as the second respondent, with the speakers of both houses of Parliament, the National Treasury, Office of the Ombudsman and the EACC listed as interested parties. Lynn Chalo for Prime Edition.
Very well. Now, over 1,800 families living on land earmarked for the expansion of the proposed Malindi International Airport project are urging government to expedite their compensation.
The families are threatening to stay put and continue developing the land if not compensated on time.
Squatters living on land earmarked for the proposed Malindi International Airport expansion project are now threatening to carry out other development projects due to delays in compensation.
Sisi kama wakazi ambao tumeathirika na mambo ya airport, tutaendelea na miradi yetu. Tutaendelea na mambo yetu ya kila siku. Ikiwa serikali watakuja wanataka kupanua uwanja wa airport, waje na new terms, waje tuzungumze tena, wafanye valuation upya.
Still in Kilifi County, a partnership between the Sauti ya Wanawake Pwani Group and Action Aid is offering a new lease of life to girls who had dropped out of school due to early marriages and pregnancy. The 9-month training program offers life and literacy skills to 1,200 girls between the ages of 9 and 14 years.
Kwa sasa hivi mradi huu Education for Life uko na wasichana 1,241 katika kaunti ya Kilifi, ambao wasichana hawa leo hii wako hapa. Hawa ni wasichana ambao wamechagua pathway ya kwenda polytechnic.
Elsewhere, a section of parents from Kiambu County, led by the Kiambu Parents Association chairman, Samuel Onjema, are demanding that pupils who excelled in their Kenya Certificate of Primary Education examinations are admitted into their national schools of choice.
Many a times we find that the learners, even the schools that they did not select, they are called to those schools. We appeal to the Ministry of Education. Make sure the playing ground is leveled. All children get to the school of their choice.
Finally, 40,000 families across the country are set to benefit from assorted basic commodities worth 160 million shillings during this month of Ramadan.
Parts of the country are experiencing severe drought, and we are hoping that this relief that can be able to be distributed to these affected families can ease their suffering during this time.
The donations were made in Mombasa by Jafar Foundation and Grain Bulk Limited and will go a long way in cushioning the families as the country faces harsh economic times. For Primetime Edition, I'm Jeritage Kiprano.
Well, that report brings us straight into our second break right here on KBC Prime.
And we still have plenty more to come, including business news with Carol Njenga and later on sports news. Do stay with us.
With Richard Munga. Okay.
Vitimbi Jumatatu hii. Jumuika nasi siku ya Jumatatu ili upate uhondo kamili kwenye vitimbi. Hiyo basi usikose burudani tosha kila siku ya Jumanne hadi Alhamisi saa 1:35 katika tamthilia ya Maza.
Get ready for the next big thing.
A woman with a voice is by definition a strong woman.
So we need to start bringing out the profession in a woman.
when we demonstrate. They will come when we've been tear gassed, not when we want to pass the message.
The Dada's Show is back, a show where women get to be themselves and discuss real issues.
She cannot allow other women to come in the same space because she's getting different privileges from men. So akiona mwanamke ako like this is a competitor.
This being an election year, we have given an opportunity to women to express themselves and share their expectations during this critical moment in our country.
The issue of corruption and how it has impacted women and children in this country.
Create jobs for the informal sector, create jobs for the youth who leave the universities.
Hatutaki bora uongozi, tunataka uongozi bora.
Keep your heels, head and standards high. Dadas, coming soon.
Let's now take a look at the business news of the day. And news just in, the Insurance Regulatory Authority has placed Resolution Insurance Company Limited under statutory management. IRA says the company has been facing challenges, particularly relating to its ability to meet its obligation. Now, from now henceforth, Resolution Insurance Company is not authorized to transact any business regarding insurance. So, Policyholders Compensation Fund has been appointed as the statutory manager of Resolution Insurance Company Limited. Now, moving on to other stories of the day, motorists endured another day of major fuel supply disruption on Tuesday, with hours-long queues witnessed at petrol stations that had fuel. A spot check by KBC found that petrol stations which had supplies rationed the fuel, capping purchases at 2,000 shillings per customer. The situation was an improvement from what was witnessed over the weekend and on Monday after the government announced the release of 34.4 billion shillings to settle fuel subsidies owed to marketers. Tuesday afternoon, tens of motorists and border riders queued for hours to fuel, while others were turned away as the pumps ran dry at some petrol stations. Most petrol stations have run out of stock, and motorists could be seen driving in and out of the petrol stations in search of the scarce commodity.
All the way from Gong Road, kuzunguka huko line kubwa ile iko na mafuta ni chache, alafu baadaye nikapata huko duka.
Center hakuna mafuta, industry hakuna mafuta. Sasa nimetoka industry huko Road A hakuna mafuta.
Kwa Westlands 4. So hii nikapita hii Shell iko hapo Kenyatta Avenue, alafu nimekuja hii. So kama hii ni ya 7.
In Nairobi, some filling stations received supply but capped purchases to a maximum of fuel worth 2,000 shillings.
Hii shida yenye iko, huwezi kunywa mafuta mingi, unaambiwa ukunywe bakishia wenzako.
Most businesses have been brought to a standstill as the fuel shortage continues to bite.
Long time on the queues. I was to travel in the morning to Garissa. I could not travel because there was no fuel.
That 1 hour and a half, one and a half hours nimepoteza mahali kule, nimekuwa nimebeba client wawili watatu.
The situation has not eased up in most parts of the country despite the government releasing 34.4 billion shillings as the subsidy owed to fuel marketers. The fuel crisis that started last week in North Rift and Western Kenya triggered panic buying that saw some fuel stations increasing prices above the recommended prices. The fuel availability situation in Mombasa and Kisumu has improved.
I think you can see the lines moving. So even if you go to Obote Road, everywhere, Nairobi Road, I think the fuel is now at least it's available.
Imekuwa kama bahati pia, tumepita hapa tukapata gari linalotoa mafuta na sisi tukaunga line, pengine kutokana na hatua ya rais jana, huenda kukawa na afueni.
Motorists are, however, still moving around with jerrycans to buy reserves just in case of another shortage. In Parliament, Garissa Town MP Adan Duale sought answers on measures put in place to avert another fuel crisis and a breakdown of the monthly fuel subsidy disbursement.
The chairperson provide the total amount of money collected under the fuel levy, under the Petroleum Fuel Levy Fund. 3, could the chairperson provide a breakdown of reimbursements of fuel levy fund?
Now we focus on the pre-budget story, where this year's budget is about 3.3 trillion shillings. To finance the budget, the National Treasury has proposed that the Kenya Revenue Authority collect 2.1 trillion shillings, while 300 billion shillings is to be raised through appropriation in aid, 47 billion shillings from grants, and borrow the remaining 846.1 billion shillings. Here is our reporter Regina Manyara with the details.
In the current financial year, the Kenya Revenue Authority has been tasked with collecting 1.8 trillion shillings. In this year's budget, the National Treasury is proposing to increase the tax collections target on the Kenya Revenue Authority by 300 billion shillings. The National Treasury expects that in the next financial year that begins in July, the Kenya Revenue Authority would collect 2.1 trillion shillings. On paper, it looks good, but tax and economic experts think this would be an uphill task for the Kenya Revenue Authority, given that this is an election year, as well as the impact of high fuel prices, the Russia-Ukraine war, high crude oil prices, as well as the COVID-19 pandemic that has disrupted the global supply chain and affected key sectors of the economy.
Looking at part of the effects that the country is going through right now, either through the drought, the imports, the foreign exchange is going out of hand. I think there's an estimate that we are going to hit around 130 Kenya shillings to the dollar. That is something that is alarming, because it will make our imports very, very expensive.
This is despite the recovery that has been reported in some sectors, such as the financial services sector, that has seen banks reporting supernormal profits, and the hospitality industry, whose figures have recovered to pre-COVID levels.
So 2022, we have a big opportunity, and we can see that in our forward bookings, particularly from June onwards. But again, it's not that we've recovered necessarily. The world isn't back to normal.
The National Treasury has also indicated that the government plans to raise 300 billion shillings from the appropriation in aid, which is cash raised by public entities through rendering services to the public. In addition, the government expects 47 billion shillings in grants to finance the budget. However, this leaves a deficit of 846.1 billion shillings, which the government plans to plug by borrowing 275.9 billion from the external market and 570.2 billion shillings locally.
With regard to the debt, I think there is no doubt that our debt will need to be restructured. That is, from all the indicators we are looking at, to raise the sort of funds required for debts that are actually maturing now, there is going to be need to restructure the debts and to talk to the various lenders about this.
The National Treasury projects that the fiscal deficit inclusive of grants would be at 846.1 billion shillings, which is 6% of GDP in this year's budget. Regina Manyara reporting for Prime Edition.
The last 10 years saw an increase in allocation towards several infrastructural projects year on year in a bid to spur economic growth and improve service delivery. The Jubilee administration has been banking on infrastructure projects as a multiplier effect for economic growth. Today, we track the projects, their capital injections, and impact of the budgetary allocation towards them in the last 10 years.
Kenya's investment in infrastructure stands at 6.5% of GDP per annum. It is reported that the country's infrastructure quality was also at 53.6, with 0 being the worst and 100 being the best in the scale.
Infrastructure, wengine wanasema munafanya mambo haya kwa nini? Twayafanya kwa sababu bila infrastructure huwezi inua hali ya maisha ya wananchi. Huwezi upate kazi. Tukisema tunataka stima, tuwasema tunataka stima sio kwa sababu watu wanakula stima. lakini hiyo stima inasaidia kijana kule kijijini kuanza kazi yake ya jua kali, kuanza kazi yake ya welding kidogo hapo, kuhakikisha wameweka barafu maziwa yake isiharibike. So infrastructure is important.
In the 2014-2015 budget, 255.9 billion shillings was allocated for energy, infrastructure and ICT, which accounted for 14.5% of the consolidated national government budget in that period. In the 2015-2016 budget, Kenya apportioned over 330 billion to capital projects, infrastructure and energy. The government significantly increased its allocation to energy projects from 40 billion in 2015-2016 to 120 billion in 2016-2017. In the financial year 2017-2018, the infrastructure budgetary allocation of 285 billion represented approximately 12% of the government's total expenditure. The 2017-2018 fiscal budget had also focused on attracting investments to special economic zones by providing tax incentives. In the financial year 2018-2019, the budgetary allocation for oil and gas was similar to the previous year. In the financial year 2019-2020, the budget was anchored on the government's focus on creating jobs. In the financial year 2019-2020 budget, Treasury allocated 18.8 billion to housing. The 2020-2021 budget statement was presented against a backdrop of an economy battling with the novel coronavirus, food security threats from locust invasions and floods ravaging the country. In the year, 172.4 billion was allocated towards roads and bridges. The budgetary allocation towards this infrastructure was, however, reduced by 4.7% from 180.9 billion shillings in the financial year 2019-2020. In the 2021-2022 budget, analysts say fiscal balance is the key to maintaining macroeconomic stability, inspiring growth and reducing the pace of growth of public debt.
We need to think very seriously about what expenses will have to be cut. We are no longer discussing about what to do. We now must discuss what to cut.
Experts say prudent financial management is called to achieve this objective.
Private sector firms were forced to reduce purchasing of goods in March in what Stanbic Bank Kenya attributed to higher cost of inputs. According to Stanbic Bank, Purchasing Managers Index dropped from a reading of 52.9 in February to 50.5 in March, signaling a slower and only marginal improvement in the health of the Kenyan private sector economy. Details of this and other stories in our corporate brief.
The latest Stanbic Bank Purchasing Managers Index indicates that price gauges for both business costs and charges reached their highest levels since early 2014, as purchase prices were pushed up by the war in Ukraine and taxes. The report indicates that economic activity continued to expand last month, but at a slower pace than the previous month. The slowdown was driven by rising inflation, which resulted in slower demand by consumers and a contraction in output by producers. Meanwhile, UAP Insurance Kenya has posted a 543 million shillings in pre-tax profit, which is a 25% dip on the 720 million shillings that the underwriter posted for 2020. The firm attributes the dip in profits to property revaluation loss of 600 million shillings that was triggered by expiring lease contracts and downward renegotiation of rent to align with the market rate. Net claims incurred increased by 20% in line with business growth on account of a spike in motor and medical claims. Finally, the Kenya Iron and Scrap Metal Dealers Association are appealing to the government to lift the ban on trade in scrap metals, even if it is temporary, so that they can sell off their stocks. They say such a measure would help them recoup their investments.
Sisi tulifungiwa kazi kama tuko na stock. Hatukupewa hata muda wa kuuza stoko yetu.
As an association, we have put various parameters to see that we are locking out anyone who's going to be involved in the vice of vandalism.
Key industry stakeholders in the Scrap Metal Union are now calling for an immediate course of action from the government with regards to the ban on the sale of exports on scrap metal. The leaders are now urging the president to give them direct measures to address their current crisis, as they say, enough is enough. Reporting for Prime Edition, I am Dutamo Kami.
Hugh Dutamukami. And that is how we wrap up business news for tonight. My name is Carol Jenga. But before I go, here is the county fact file. And tonight we focus on Samburu County.
Samburu County, County 25, is located in the former Rift Valley province and covers a total land area of 20,182.5 kilometers squared. It shares its borders with 4 other counties: Marsabit to the north and northeast, Isiolo to the east, Turkana to the west and northwest, and Laikipia and Baringo to the southwest. Headquartered in Maralal town, Samburu County has a population of 310,327 according to the 2019 Kenya Housing and Population Census. The Samburu people are closely related to the Maasai, who mainly occupy the county. The Samburu rely on cattle as their source of livelihood. Their main food consists of maize, milk, and blood, a delicacy that the Maasai people enjoy. Other ethnic groups living in Samburu County include Rendile, Turkana, and the Borana. They rear cattle, donkeys, camels, as well as goats. Samburu County has 3 sub-counties, that is Samburu East, Samburu West, and Samburu North, covering the county's 21,000 kilometers squared. The county comprises 3 constituencies: Samburu West, Samburu North, and Samburu East, with 82,787 registered voters as per the 2017 Independent Electorate Boundaries Commission register. The main economic activities in the county are tourism, pastoralism, and commercial businesses. Samburu County is a paradise for travelers seeking fun, adventure, unique cultural experience, or just pure solitude off the beaten tracks and the fast lanes of urbanization. The nerve center of wildlife conservation and tourism in the North Rift region is Samburu National Reserve. It is home to herds of elephants incredibly pleasant to watch, especially when they converge at the Wasinyiro River in the late mornings to drink, bath, and play. Samburu County government is headed by Governor Moses Kasaine Lenol Kulal, a member of the ruling Jubilee political party. Lenol Kulal was the first governor following Kenya's devolution to county administrations.
Are you an aspiring candidate in the upcoming general elections? Do you want your agenda and manifesto to reach your voters effectively? At KBC, we have the most comprehensive and credible online platform that has profiles of all prospective candidates. Log on to www.kbc.co.ke/2022 aspirants and let Kenyans know more about you, your past achievements, your manifesto, and your development agenda once you get elected to office. What's more, the website is easy to navigate. We will create your profile, post pictures and short videos with your campaign messages at affordable hosting fees. Log on to www.kbc.co.ke/2022 aspirants today and establish your brand authority as we lead towards the forthcoming general elections.
Oh, good evening, and as always, it is an honor to have your company for the KBC Sports Update with me, Richard Munga. To a top story tonight, whereby Athletics Kenya President Jack Tuwei says only athletes who meet the Athletics Kenya requirements will be invited to participate in the national trials for both World Championship and the Commonwealth Games. Meanwhile, Special Olympics Kenya is going to partner with sports journalists in a countrywide pre-election peace touch run that is geared towards promoting peace.
Speaking at a press briefing, Athletics Kenya President Jack Tuwei said it is sad to see young people end their careers prematurely because of engaging in doping activities. Tuwei maintained no athlete will be allowed to represent Kenya at national and international assignments if he or she does not meet the said requirements.
Prior to the commencement of each year, the Integrity Unit Board determine in its absolute discretion the category of each member federation by taking into consideration the following factors. 1, the doping history of athletes, athlete support personnel, and other persons under the jurisdiction of the member federation.
Meanwhile, the Special Olympics Kenya will partner with sports journalists in a countrywide pre-election peace touch run geared towards promoting peace. Speaking during a seminar at the University of Nairobi, SOC Sports Manager Vincent Mungai noted that sports journalists in Kenya have been sensitized on the need to understand the rules and regulation of the sport. Special Olympics Kenya says understanding dynamics of sports will foster good practice by disseminating information.
Today what we are doing is we wanted to create synergies with the journalists so that at least we can be able to come up with areas of, let me say, reporting. In case of, for Special Olympics, as we deal with athletes with intellectual disabilities and they engage in sports.
For Prime Edition Sports, I'm Daniel Mwendwa.
And as always, thank you, Dan Mwendo, for that report. And meanwhile, the National Olympic Committee of Kenya has commenced the second edition of Elite Youth Camp at Kenyatta University Ruiru campus. Coaches who underwent training in preparations for the youth camp last week have already reported to camp alongside NOC Youth and Elite Commission members to prepare for the athletes. The camp will feature athletes aged between 12 to 18 years from various federations as well as different counties. The athletes have already started reporting to camp, led by handball, taekwondo and triathlon. The official opening ceremony is set to take place on Thursday at the Kenyatta University.
This camp is important for us because, as we say, a homestead without children has no future. So for the games in Kenya, a team without youths being developed has got no future.
Well, internationally, Arsenal boss Mikel Arteta apologized for his side's performance